Hello, my name's John Hansen from the builder Meydenbauer Group, and today I'm going to talk to you about searching for land and running feasibility on land. I'm going to show you the tools and how we use the tools so that if you wish to try it yourself, you'll know what to do and allow you to save a lot of time learning on your own. And without any further ado, I'll get into in general. The area that we're looking in is the Puget Sound East Side. That's what we specialize in. All the tools that I'm about to show you are applicable to all the areas in the region. So I'll probably concentrate on King County because it's where we do most of our work. So King County is a little bit unique in that group because it's a large county and we have a number of smaller parcels. So we actually have some 630,000 parcels in King County. This is a shared free database from the county that you can download yourself. And you can see there on the left that we have some 632,000 parcels in King County. And when you're searching for a particular lot to do development, let's say you wish to purchase a lot in order to build a single family home, how do you narrow down from 630,000 parcels to 10 or 20 that you can manage that you're interested in? And that's what we're going to be covering in this video. When you want to search the parcels that are in King County or any other county, there's a few places you can query the database in order to narrow it down. The most famous one is CoreLogic because you'll see it quoted in the newspapers frequently. Something called the Case-Shiller Index that's quoted in the Wall Street Journal about housing prices. If you've purchased property before, you've gotten title reports. Those title reports, they use CoreLogic as their number one data. So there's a paid service. You can access their API. You can write queries to their database. The next one, it's not as well known, but it's equally as good, is called Century Dynamics. They're out of Idaho, and a handful of title companies also use them as their database when they're researching properties. Again, there's a paid service for an API. There's a free service. Just about all of the counties, King County, Snohomish County included, have databases that you can download for free. In King County, you can see that database was updated in 2020. Most of the data will be accurate enough for our purpose. It has the great advantage that it's free. In fact, you're looking at the King County database, and what you can see is parcel address, parcel numbers are all there. You'll have to learn a little bit about the database. Most of us who are in the industry have access to title companies that will provide database searches for free. So in our case, what we do is we simply ask our title representatives to run certain queries on the database and send us the results. And in this way, we save time. We order title commitment frequently, so we're a customer of these firms. Once you have access to the data, the next thing is you want to know, how do I get 630,000 parcels down to the 10 or 20 that I can manage? So you're writing queries to the database. And one of the main attributes of the property that you're interested in is going to be the assessed value. To give you a distinction that is often confused, even in the industry, but certainly outside of the industry, the assessed value is a government employee who's using algorithms and applying values to properties for tax purposes. And the phrase we use is good enough for government work. It's not a bad approximation to make sure you're somewhere in the right ballpark, but the assessed value is 2 or 3 times off of the actual market. Not frequently that far off, but it is just about always low. Plus or minus 20% is pretty common. Minus, meaning the assessed value is, for the most part, lower than the market value. The government or the county doesn't want everyone challenging their assessed value for tax purposes, so they generally pitch low. For your purposes of searching, it's a good start. Much more intriguing to me and less commonly used, but I think should be used more often, is 2 lines down, in this case, in this format for the data, you can see improved value. And what I'm looking for here is, if the improved value is 25% or less than the total assessed value, I am very interested in the property. And the reason is because it's implying that the property is a tear down. And the trend in the area and march of time is that we built all the best land first. There are many A-plus lots that currently have houses from the 1950s and 1960s and 1970s on them, ready for replacement, but you're not going to find them if you're just searching vacant lots. You'll find that they're fairly low quality because they're vacant. They were hard to deal with, whereas these teardowns are often prime properties. So you want to look for both because who knows? Yes, you're going to find the property you're looking for, But in the end, you're looking for one single unique property. So the right way to go is to look for teardowns and fully vacant property. The next thing that's of interest is, of course, size. And in this particular case, the example I'm using, we got a 5-acre property, and my search criteria might be in a quasi-rural zone. I'm in between urban and rural, and maybe I'd like to have something more than 1 acre or less than 10 acres. And this would be a fit. It's a 5-acre property. Next, I'm interested, what can I do with the 5 acres? So this question about what is zoning. So you can see here, this zoning happens to be, we're in unincorporated King County, and unincorporated King County is calling this zoning RA 2.5. It is difficult and complicated about zoning. We have a lot of jurisdictions in this area. Every city and municipality jurisdiction, meaning county, has its own zoning code, and they all use similar letters and similar numbers. You can see the same RA 2.5 in one area quoted in another area, and it can mean two different things. But all the jurisdictions have their code online, and you can search what RA 2.5 means. And in our case, what we can do is we can take a look at King County, and I'm interested in RA 2.5. They've put their code online, and I can see in this table RA 2.5, and I have 0.4 dwelling unit per acre, minimum lot size. So when I looked up the property, one of the things I get is the parcel shape. In this particular one, I'm probably talking about one home on a 5-acre lot. We've had one home on a 2.5-acre lot, but in this case, there is not quite enough land to subdivide. This has told me a lot about the property itself. Another search criteria that's often used is zip codes. I was going to look at a particular zip code. You'll see Lake Washington, Lake Snohomish there, and you'll see all the familiar zip codes in the area. And if we zoom in, we'll start to see the familiar Kirkland ones, Bellevue, etc. All the properties have a zip code associated with them. One word of warning, vacant properties sometimes do not have a zip code attached to them yet. So the code is not always terrific if you're looking for vacant, unimproved parcel. There's any number of criteria you could use, but is about school district. Every parcel, regardless of whether it's been assigned an address or not, has been allocated a school district, which is very useful because in this area, many people wish to search on school district. In this case, it's Lake Washington School District, this particular parcel. Is one of the heavily searched. Some of the less used popular search criteria are things like in an urban area, I might be interested if the property is on a septic system or whether it's on public sewer. For example, sewer, I can use that as a criteria, and I can see individual. That means it's a septic system. It's not public sewer. So there's any number of criteria that you can use. This just happens to be some of the most popular ones that we used in order to narrow down the 630,000 parcels, a handful of parcels that match what you want to do and you can manage. So now you've identified using the search criteria of things like size and zoning, and you've found a handful of properties that may support the development that you want to engage in. And you'll want to look on a map where this property is, how it relates to other properties. One of the tools we use is Landglide. Landglide, I think, costs maybe a little $100 a year. It's an inexpensive app, and it's got a nice looking interface. It's easy to use and it's good looking. In the case of the property we've been using as an example, you can see here that here's where the property is relative to the area. And I think if we go in, the property's in the top right, you can see Albertsons and Highway 202 running along the bottom. And then if we go in close enough, you can see the other streets and relative to your search area. And one of the other tools that we use, which is free, something called IMAP. This is King County. It's also free of charge, and you can see on IMAP where the property is. IMAP has a lot of tools that you can use for measuring a property. We were looking at a parcel map on the tax details earlier, but sometimes you might be wanting to know how long a certain distance is, and all these sort of simple tools exist on IMAP, can often be quite useful. And then the last one and the most straightforward tool is Parcel Viewer, but this doesn't give that much information about the parcel in itself, except its location. Using this third tool, we see exactly the same thing. Now you can see where the property is relative to maybe some of the things of interest, such as your employer, or frequently in this particular location, people are interested in the schools. You can see the Goddard School there, the Montessori Children's School, and around 228th, the Tesla STEM School is very popular search on Louise Alcott Elementary School. That's one of the reasons to go to Google Maps. Once we've identified a group of parcels that are of interest that we'll be able to develop in the manner that we desire, the next thing I want to do is look up the owners. Let's say in this particular case, I can see the owner's name. They give a tax billing address, but frequently the tax billing address is not where the people live, not where I'm going to find them. If I want to know where Dean R. Barnett is, go to this free site, and I'm going to type in Dean R. Barnett. And last I knew, he was in Redmond, Washington, because that's what the tax details say. It turns out he may not be living on the property, and we've got two Dean R. Burnett's to choose from, and one is 80 and one is 69. So that's sort of interesting because we don't know which one is the right one. But because of the tax parcels, I saw that he has a spouse apparently. So what I can do here is I can see that Linda C. Barnett also is on ownership. So we shall look up into the, I'm also going to say Redmond, Washington, and see what happens. And there's only one Linda C. Barnett. If I look up the details here, and if I go further down, possible associates, I was hoping to see possible spouse. So we've connected them. It turns out that Dean Barnett has passed away, even though he's on the tax details, because the tax details are not updated necessarily. So what I've discovered is that Linda C. Barnett owns the property outright, and that she currently lives in Edmonds. And this is where I'm going to contact her. Now can make contact with the property owner. So my next stage would be I would handwrite a card and send it to Linda Barnett and ask her if she's interested in selling her property in Union Hill. In this particular case, in Union Hills, where the property that we've been using as an example is unincorporated King County, I think this is the sort of property you're looking for because the owner is not living there, which means likely she's obviously an older lady. Maybe one of her children lives there or she's renting it. But the likelihood that an owner is going to sell a property that they're not living in is quite a bit higher than the likelihood that they're going to sell a property that they are living. So far, we're off to a good start. Now, in order to introduce ourselves and have the owner used to be comfortable with who we are, maybe we send one handwritten card. Maybe a month later, we follow up with another handwritten card. But at some point, you probably have to follow up with a phone call. And again, the True People Search is a good source for these phone numbers. In my experience, this primary phone number works 1 out of 3 times, maybe 50% of the time. So it's not a bad start. And then, of course, you phone and you introduce yourself and you explain that you sent a card and you find out whether they're actually interested in selling their property. Maybe you go through 20 properties like this. Maybe you go through 50 properties like this, meaning that you actually end up making contact. The property is of interest. You make contact with the owner maybe 20 or 50 times. And at some point in there, you're going to find an owner who is planning on selling. Likely what happened is your card and contact is not what prompted them to sell. Many people are considering selling their property well in advance of when it comes on market. And you happen to make contact with someone as they were preparing to sell the property, but they haven't actually put it on market. And of course, that's a good time to make contact with them because it's not on the open market, it's off market, which allows you to negotiate with the seller a one-on-one. On the other hand, the problem when a seller has not had experience of the open market often have an unrealistic view of price. So it's not necessarily an easy negotiation, and you may have to be prepared to go into a number of negotiations with a number of different sellers over time before you have a successful negotiation. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on looking for land and making contact with owners. I'd like to say that it can be an awkward process. The online tools of searching for lots is relatively straightforward for anyone who has time and inclination. The making contact with owners can be a more difficult process. It can be awkward. And sometimes Meydenbauer has more success than an individual because we're a firm. But when dealing with sellers and you're talking about their personal assets, they're able to tell a firm like Meydenbauer bad news and they're able to talk bluntly and not feel bad about it. Whereas when they're talking to another individual, it can sometimes be a little bit more awkward. We do this all the time. We do it well. We find properties for people. And if you're serious about looking for a property, I hope you'll give it a call. Thank you very much for your time.